context on what true market pull and validation looks like. What actually makes great software products? What are some of the core pieces that have actually led to great software products? We rise to the level of our perspective, right? When we are in a startup environment, right? We're taking in so much information. And so we want to clarify, what does great actually look like when we're starting to get some of these signs and signals? Okay, great. I have an idea. Now what? What is that next step that we take? Couple of things here. Most common mistakes with founders that we typically see, right? First is actually not necessarily solving a real problem. And don't say that lightly, right? To discount anyone's idea. But when we think of how deep the problem is and how acute or recurring a problem is, right? That is really what we're getting at there. Second, kind of getting stuck on a tar pit idea. In other words, common ideas that have been around forever that can be, quite frankly, another iteration of something that may already exist. And really 3 and 4 are more on the personal side of jumping into an idea without evaluating if it's a good one or waiting for the perfect idea. I am certainly guilty of number 4. I'm actually guilty of number 3 as well. And really understanding that, hey, if this idea is more a good starting point. Slack started as a game for the browser. There's Notion started as actually more of what Loom is today. There are so many like major companies and products that we use on a day-to-day basis that started as something totally different. And so if you wait for the perfect idea, you might be waiting for a long time, right? You see this intersection and Venn diagram of a deeply important problem, an underserved market or a market that has a real need, and quite frankly, something that you're really, really excited about. And so when Brian Armstrong and Coinbase went to market, it actually started as BitBank. And this is actually the first iteration of what it looked like. From here, this was their starting point. This is what they fundamentally used to validate the idea and see what demand actually looks like. Quotes from what Brian Armstrong said. And he said, right now, there's about 100,000 Bitcoin users, despite the relatively immature tools, right? Which is a good indicator of interest. Saying it's incredibly difficult, right? And you basically have to, this is what you have to use. It's a scary thing. It is ugly, right? You have to go through a lot of steps, and he proposed a differentiated solution. Some of the key questions, right? Really, really to think about fundamentally. When you think about you, yourself, and your team, does your team have founder market fit to work on this idea? Generally, if you're pursuing it, I would say typically yes, but really taking time to reflect on the rest of your team can be impactful. Today, when we think about validating an idea, YC came out with a really great study. They essentially interviewed 20 founders from their top 100 companies. And on average, or median, founders spoke to 30 potential customers before feeling like their idea was solid. This is where I think finding a comparable later stage company that has a somewhat similar business model simply to help bridge the articulation can do wonders. Then explaining why this is unique to us and how this allows for us to scale in a meaningful way and it's a sustainable revenue model. At the end of the day, if someone doesn't understand it, it's so hard to get to that next step.
Like a community of just like, let's just push each other. Let's just like push each other to the edge. Be like, okay, well, you said that's your competitor, but like, tell me more about that and tell me why you think you're better, right? Because if we can do that with each other in a supportive community, then like when VCs have that question for you, you're gonna be so much more believable and credible because you've already thought about like every single scenario.